Sir, check this clause. At 11:47 p.m., a billionaire lost everything. A signature, that's all it took. One flick of a pen worth $1.8 billion gone before the ink was dry. And the only person who saw it coming was the woman paid to clean the floors. Her warning was 6 words long. He laughed, thanked her, and walked away. But when the lights went out in his glass tower that night, and the boardroom screens went black, he realized the whisper wasn't superstition. It was the truth screaming underneath the noise. How could she have known? How could a woman scrubbing coffee stains understand a contract designed by the country's most expensive lawyers? And why would she risk everything to warn the man who never even looked at her face? They said Ethan Cole was untouchable, the golden mind of New York finance, the man who turned risk into religion. But power breeds blindness. And somewhere between genius and pride, he stopped reading the fine print. She didn't. That whisper, check this clause, it wasn't luck. It was the last flare from someone who had already burned once before. And when he ignored it, everything she tried to save went down with him. This isn't a love story. It's a reckoning. It's about a man who thought he was untouchable and a woman who proved him wrong. Would you have stopped to listen? Would you question the hands that clean your world? Or would you, like him, keep walking right into the fire you built? Because the empire didn't fall overnight. It started with a whisper and ended with a confession no one saw coming. Clause 14b. Transfer of controlling interest upon merger. 6 lines that could erase a life's work, and the cleaning lady was the only one who read it. Before we get into the story, kindly let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this story, please like the video so other people just like you can find this video too. Now, let's get into it. The city never sleeps, but on nights like this, even its heartbeat feels heavier. Rain slides down the glass walls of Cole Enterprises, tracing the outlines of ambition. Inside, light burns from the top floor, a single boardroom hovering above Manhattan's skyline like a floating crown. In that room sits Ethan Cole, a man who clawed his way from a basement startup to a billion-dollar empire. The cameras love him. Investors quote him. And tonight, he's about to close the deal that will make him untouchable. Around the table, lawyers, analysts, and polished men who learn to smile without ever meaning it. Champagne waits on ice. Every word in this room has a price tag. The contract before Ethan is thick, 500 pages of promises and poison. His pen rests on the final signature line, his reflection staring back at him through the mirrored surface of the table. And then she moves. Clara Ruiz, 43 years old, a woman who once drafted contracts in a law firm until the world decided she didn't belong in boardrooms anymore. Now she polishes their floors. She cleans the fingerprints of the powerful while they rewrite the rules of the world. But that night, something catches her eye. A single phrase left visible on a projected screen while a board member takes a call. Clause 14b. Transfer of equity rights upon liquidation. It sounds harmless, legal, clinical, forgettable. But Clara's hands freeze. Her breath catches. You ever had that feeling? That moment when your instincts scream louder than reason?
When the room stays quiet but your gut knows something's wrong, that was Clara's moment. She wipes her hands on her gloves, trying to convince herself it's not her place, that it's just another night. But the words keep echoing in her head. Transfer of equity rights. She's seen that clause before, and the last time she did, a company vanished, and 100 workers lost everything. The doors open. Ethan steps out, jacket slung over his arm, confidence practically glowing in the dimmed light hallway. He doesn't see her first. People like him rarely do. But Clara, she takes a step forward anyway. A small, impossible step. Her voice barely rises above the sound of the rain. "Sir, check this clause." 6 words that cut through marble and ego like a blade. He turns, half amused, half curious. He's used to praise, not warnings, used to people admiring him, not questioning him. He gives her a polite smile, the kind you give when you think someone means well but doesn't matter. "Thank you," he says softly. "We've got it covered." And then he walks away. Would you have stopped him? Would you have asked her what she meant? Or would you, like him, trust the ink more than the instinct? The doors to the boardroom close behind him. Inside, the room hums with finality. The pen glides across the signature line. The final deal is sealed. Cameras flash. Applause erupts. Outside, the power flickers. A brief blackout cuts the light, just for a second. Enough for Clara to see her own reflection in the darkened glass, a woman invisible to the world, yet the only one who knows what just happened. When the lights return, Ethan raises his glass. He says, "To new beginnings." But beginnings have a cost. She watches from the hall, mop in hand, heart racing. No one notices her. No one ever does. But she feels it, the shift, the subtle tremor of something breaking beneath all that polished confidence. Thunder rolls louder outside. That night, while the city drowned in rain, the seeds of ruin were already planted, and the man who thought he had it all had just signed it all away. What would you have done if a stranger whispered your downfall before it began? Would you have listened? Or would you keep walking and let fate cash the check you just signed? In a city built on ambition, sometimes the quietest voice is the only one telling the truth. But truth doesn't wait to be heard. It waits to be proven.
Morning came dressed in gold. Headlines screamed in unison. Ethan Cole pulls off deal of the decade. Coal industry surges after billion-dollar acquisition. Across every news screen, his name shone brighter than the city skyline. In less than 12 hours, he'd become the symbol of American ambition, a self-made genius who could bend the market to his will. Investors cheered, reporters smiled, and somewhere an old man in a diner said, "That boy's unstoppable." To the world, Ethan Cole had everything. But the higher you climb, the thinner the air gets, and the less you see what's beneath you. Behind him, his CFO, Miles Trent, moved through the room like a shadow made of charm. Miles had been with Ethan for 8 years. He knew how he thought, how he trusted, how he signed. And that trust, the kind that builds empires, was about to become the weapon that tore it down. You could hear Ethan on the news. "Helios Energy represents the future, and we're proud to be leading that future." Every word rehearsed, every smile calibrated, yet beneath that confidence was a quiet crack, the kind you can't see until it breaks completely. Down below, in the same tower that bore his name, a janitor clocked in 6 minutes early. Clara Ruiz. She watched his interview play on a flickering lobby screen.
her reflection ghosting beside his image, him in a tailored suit, her in a faded uniform. There was a time she'd been on the other side of those cameras, not famous, but respected, a paralegal in a firm that handled mergers just like his. But 6 years ago, she defended the wrong man, a whistleblower who dared to expose a fraud. The case collapsed, and so did her life. Fired, blacklisted, her license suspended for misconduct. Now she scrubbed the very buildings where the people who destroyed her still raise toast. Have you ever watched your old life continue without you? Watch the same faces you once worked beside pass you in the hall and not even recognize you? Clara did. Every single night. She glances down at her phone, a reminder for her father's medication, a hospital bill she can't yet pay. Her thumb hovers over the total, $2,843. She exhales, then goes back to work. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ethan laughs with Miles over espresso and victory cigars. The kind of laughter that comes from men who believe they've already won. Miles raises a glass. To forever, my friend. And Ethan clinks his against it, never noticing that Miles doesn't drink. In business, betrayal rarely looks like anger. It looks like loyalty that lingers too long. While Ethan celebrated, Miles had already moved money. A quiet transfer, small, untraceable, but deliberate. The kind of number that doesn't raise alarms until it's too late. And buried inside those numbers was the clause. Clause 14B. Every empire hides a weak spot. Sometimes it's greed, sometimes it's pride. For Ethan, it was belief. Belief that the people who cheered for him wanted him to keep winning. But what if they didn't? What if the hands shaking yours are the same ones tightening the rope? Clara was polishing the elevator doors. Behind her, Miles and 2 lawyers step out, whispering. Lawyer said in a muffled tone, "He'll never read it. It's locked in." Miles quietly responds, "That's the point." The elevator closes before Clara can look up, but she hears enough. She tells herself it's not her business. She's just the cleaning staff. But truth has a way of sticking like fingerprints on glass. No matter how many times you wipe, it doesn't go away. The city moved on, but somewhere in the fine print of Helios energy, the trap had already been sprung. Miles called it a technicality. Lawyers called it standard procedure. But Clara, she knew better. Every light in that building glowed because someone below kept it clean. And every signature in that contract glowed because someone above ignored the dirt underneath. How long before those two worlds collide? Ethan Cole was too busy being celebrated to notice that the ground beneath him had already started to crack. And Clara Ruiz was too used to being ignored to realize she'd just become the only person standing between him and ruin. When does survival turn into destiny? When does a whisper become a warning you can't unhear? For Ethan and Clara, that moment was already on its way.
By the end of the week, Cole Industries looked unstoppable. Headlines turned Ethan Cole into a myth, the visionary who saw what others missed. Every news anchor wanted his time. Every investor wanted his number. But behind the applause, a small noise began to stir, quiet, rhythmic, like a loose wire humming in the walls. Something wasn't right. On the 47th floor, the cleaning crew moved in after the celebration. Empty bottles, confetti, crunkled copies of what once decided billions. To them, it was trash. But to Clara Ruiz, it was something else entirely. She crouches by the long conference table, gloved hands sorting discarded documents, half-torn drafts, review notes, post-its scrawled with initials. And there it was. Page 87. Clause 14B. Automatic reassignment of primary holdings upon merger. 16 words written in a language designed to hide intent. But she had seen those words before, buried in the case that destroyed her career. She sits on the floor, the hum of the air vents filling the room, her heart matching the rhythm of the building's electric pulse. She reads it again and again, every repetition cutting deeper. If Helios ever merges, control doesn't stay with coal industries. It transfers automatically to a third-party entity listed in Addendum 7C. She flips the page. The addendum is blank, but the signature line carries one name, Miles Trent. The realization hits her like a current. The deal wasn't a victory. It was a quiet theft wrapped in legality. She knows what that means. Ethan didn't buy Helios. He just gave it away. Have you ever known something that no one would believe if you said it out loud? That moment when truth feels heavier than your own body. That's what Clara felt sitting on that floor, a truth so dangerous it burnt to hold it. She takes a photo with her phone, one flash hidden beneath the low light of the corridor. Then she folds the page carefully, sliding it into her bag before anyone walks in. That night, she doesn't sleep. She sits at her kitchen table, her father's oxygen machine hissing softly in the next room, the sound marking time. She opens her laptop, a relic from her paralegal days, cracked and slow, and writes an email. Subject, urgent, clause 14B. Read this. Mr. Cole, you don't know me, but your contract has been compromised. Clause 14B transfers your assets upon merger to a dummy company registered offshore. You need to review Addendum 7C immediately. Please, check it. No name, no signature. She hits send. Sometimes the truth doesn't need a name, just a warning. But warnings only work if someone listens. Ethan comes into the office the next morning, early as usual. He scrolls through his inbox while his assistant briefs him on press calls. His eyes skim the subject line. He frowns. Clause 14B. What is this? He shrugs, deletes it, moves on. He tells himself it's probably spam. Another internet ghost chasing shadows and billion-dollar deals. And maybe that's what he wanted to believe, because believing the alternative would mean admitting he had been careless, and Ethan Cole didn't do careless. Hours pass. The city hums, but deep in the server rooms of coal industries, numbers begin to move. Bank transfers flagged for review, overseas holdings temporarily suspended. A minor technical issue, the systems report says. By afternoon, the minor issue isn't so minor. Ethan's private accounts, frozen. His personal line of credit, paused. No explanation. He calls his bank. They say it's routine. He calls his lawyer. They say it's a glitch. But glitches don't pull 8-figure transactions into silence. He leans back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear, watching rain gather on the glass again. The same rain from the night he signed the deal. Outside, lightning splits the skyline in two. For the first time, his reflection looks uncertain. Have you ever felt the moment your control slips? Not vanishes, just slides slowly out of reach? Like the air gets thinner and the room feels smaller. That's where Ethan Cole stood, at the top of his empire, finally realizing he didn't know who was really holding it up. Clara's at the bus stop, soaked in rain, watching people rush by. Her phone buzzes. No reply from Ethan. She closes it, disappointed, but not surprised. She warned him once face to face and once behind a screen. Twice he ignored her.
Some lessons, it seems, insist on being learned the hard way. Night again. The city lights flicker. In the distance, Coal Industries' tower glows like a monument to success. But its foundation trembles quietly. For Clara, the whisper had become a weight she couldn't drop. For Ethan, the silence was about to turn into noise he couldn't ignore. And for Miles Trent, the man who wrote the clause, the game was just beginning. How long can truth hide in plain sight before it starts breaking things open? How far can a lie stretch before it snaps? Soon, both of them were going to find out.
It started like a glitch. A system notice here, an unexplained delay there. But empires don't crumble with thunder. They fracture quietly, one ledger line at a time. Inside Coal Industries, the monitors still glowed blue, but the numbers no longer obeyed him. Overnight, Ethan's accounts were reclassified, a bureaucratic word, clean, harmless, that meant control had moved somewhere else. He called accounting. They said it was temporary. He called the bank. They said it was procedural. But when a man worth billions can't move a single dollar, it stops being procedure. It becomes panic. Emails stack up. Red flags appear. The company's stock dips, then tumbles. Board members whisper in corridors lined with framed awards, the same awards that once bore Ethan's grin. The meeting that followed felt less like business and more like a funeral no one wanted to attend. Miles Trent, crisp suit, calm voice, called it an internal review. Yet every question landed like a blow. Miles called Ethan over the phone. Until the audit clears, Ethan, we'll need to restrict discretionary transfers. Standard compliance. Ethan replied, "You're restricting me from my own company?" No one met his eyes. Loyalty evaporates fast when money starts to smell like risk. The same executives who toasted him now studied the carpet. Have you ever felt the air leave a room while you're still standing in it? That cold recognition that you're suddenly the problem everyone's pretending isn't there? That's what Ethan felt. He slams his palm on the table, the sound echoing through the boardroom. He demands, "Who authorized this?" The silence that answers him is the sound of power, shifting hands. In a single vote, they strip his signature privileges. Temporary, they say again. The favorite word of betrayal. Miles stays composed, taking notes, nodding sympathetically. His pen doesn't shake once. Outside, the city blinks in the rain. News alerts ripple through the market. Rumors of internal conflict at Coal Industries. Stock drops another 3%. Investors want statements. Banks want assurances. That evening, Ethan stands in his penthouse, staring at the skyline he once conquered. Phones keep ringing. Reporters, lawyers, voices he can't tell apart anymore. Then one sound cuts through. A whisper replayed in his memory. "Sir, check this clause." It returns with the same clarity as thunder. Her voice. That woman in the hallway. He dismissed her. He thanked her, then walked away. He sees it now. Clause 14B wasn't a footnote. It was the fuse. Guilt hit slow. First confusion, then disbelief, then the hollow ache of realizing the warning was mercy, and he ignored it. He scrolls through old emails, searching his deleted folder. There it is. Clause 14B. Read this. The anonymous message, the one he never opened. He clicks. The screen fills with words he can't unsee. Offshore account numbers, transfer conditions, names that tie back to a company he's never heard of. Thornhill Capital Limited. Thornhill Capital, registered in Cyprus, managed by a trust no one can trace, but one signature appears again and again. Miles Trent.
Would you confront your closest friend if proof of betrayal came from a stranger you once ignored? Would you believe her now? Or would your ego still speak louder than your instinct? He storms into the office before dawn, the marble floor echoing beneath his steps. Miles is already there, coffee steaming, tie perfect. Ethan, what did you sign me into? Miles, you're under stress, Ethan. Let's talk later. Later? My assets are gone. You did this. Miles, careful with accusations. Miles doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He controls the numbers now, and in this world, numbers speak louder than truth. Security enters quietly. One of the guards, a man he hired, hesitates before opening the door. Miles nods once, and hesitation disappears. Ethan is escorted out of his own office. Power never screams when it wins, it just changes the locks. Outside, cameras wait like vultures. Mr. Cole, is it true you've been suspended? Are you under investigation? He walks through the flashes without answering. In the reflection of every lens, he sees her face, the woman with the mop, the whisper he didn't hear. When pride falls, it doesn't shatter. It folds inward, crushing everything it was built to protect. Ethan doesn't go home. He drives aimlessly through the city, rain streaking the windshield like ink bleeding through paper. He pulls over by the river. The skyline glitters above the dark water. His phone vibrates. Another headline. Coal Industries faces internal power shift. For years, Ethan believed control was the same as safety. But control was an illusion and safety was the story he told himself to keep the fear quiet. Now, the fear has a name and a voice. Would you seek out the person you once dismissed if they were the only one who could tell you how to survive? Would you trust her now, or would your ego still speak louder than your instinct? Ethan grips the steering wheel, rain hammering against the glass. He whispers the words again, almost to himself. Clause 14b. Then he looks up, eyes hardening, the first flicker of resolve beneath the wreckage. In the span of 3 days, the empire of Ethan Cole has been hollowed out, his fortune frozen, his allies vanished, his name circling headlines like debris after a storm. But the whisper hasn't left him. It's the only sound that still makes sense. And somewhere in this city, Clara Ruiz, the woman he ignored, is about to become the only person who can help him fight back. The fall is complete. The reckoning begins.
He could have vanished. Every instinct told him to disappear until the headlines faded. But pride has a way of keeping men tethered to their own wreckage. 2 nights after the crash, Ethan Cole found himself standing in front of a small apartment building on the edge of Queens, the kind of place the city forgets exists until the rent comes due. He didn't belong here, and he knew it. Rain again. Always rain when something important happens. Inside, a flickering light marked apartment 4B. He hesitated before knocking. The sound of shuffling, a hesitant breath, then the chain sliding back. Clara Ruiz opened the door, still in her work uniform, hair pulled loose, exhaustion resting in the corners of her eyes. Ethan said quietly, "You were right." "About what?" "Ethan, Clause 14b. Her expression barely changes, shock hidden behind discipline. For months, no one listened to her voice. Now the man who ignored it is standing in her doorway, drenched and desperate. What do you do when the person who once looked past you suddenly looks to you for salvation? Do you help? Do you turn away? She should have closed the door. Instead, she stepped aside. He walks in. The apartment is small but neat. Stacks of legal textbooks on a chip table, a coffee pot humming like a metronome.
In the next room, the faint hiss of her father's oxygen machine fills the silence. He's never seen her world before. It's smaller than his, but somehow steadier. Every surface tells a story. Struggle, endurance, humility, all the things money hides but never replaces. He explains everything. The reclassified accounts, the frozen assets, the boardroom vote, each word heavier than the last. "You warned me. I should have listened," he said. She replies knowingly, "Most people don't. They only listen when they lose." She takes out the photocopy of the contract she saved, the one he thought was trash. Her fingers trace a line near the bottom. "Clara, here, subclause 14B.3. It doesn't just transfer control after a merger, it triggers if any associated entity reclassifies holdings for audit. That's how they got you." She's not guessing, she's dissecting. Every legal term rolls off her tongue like she never stopped practicing law. He watches, stunned. This woman, who cleans offices for a living, speaks the language that could save his empire. In that moment, admiration cuts through the fog of humiliation. It's not romantic yet, it's respect. Raw and reluctant, the kind born when someone sees what you missed and doesn't use it against you. He asked, "You were in law, weren't you?" Clara said, "I was. Before I became someone people stopped listening to." She doesn't elaborate, but her eyes do. Regret tempered by something sharper. Survival. He slides a flash drive across the table. He says, "Everything I have left. Emails, transfer records, contracts. I can't make sense of them." She plugs it in. The old laptop hums awake. Lines of data fill the screen. Company registries, timestamp logs, banking trails that spiderweb across countries. The rain outside merges with the clicking of keys. Hours pass. Coffee turns cold. They trace the flow. Coal Industries merges with Helios Energy. Helios immediately transfers holdings to a shell company, Thornhill Capital. Thornhill sends them to a secondary entity, registered in the Cayman Islands under the name of Trent Holdings. Miles didn't just plan the betrayal, he designed it. The screen glows between them like a confession neither one of them wanted to read. He said he used my name, my company. She said he used your trust. He exhales, leaning back, the realization heavy in his chest. Trust, the currency that built him, just became the weapon that destroyed him. And yet, across from him sits the one person who might help rebuild what's left. Have you ever looked at someone and realized you were wrong about everything you thought they were? Not because they changed, but because you finally started paying attention. That's what Ethan saw when he looked at Clara Ruiz. She clicks through documents, eyes darting, voice steady. She said they backdated mergers, falsified timestamps. It's layered to look legitimate, but it's all one path straight to Miles. Every discovery sharpens the tension between them. He needs her knowledge, she needs her reach. They're two halves of a plan neither can pull off alone. But trust doesn't rebuild overnight. It's a fragile thing, like glass repaired with gold. Beautiful, but never as strong as before. As dawn creeps through the blinds, the city shifts from blue to gray. He offers her his hand, hesitant. He said, "I need your help." She replied, "This isn't about helping you. It's about stopping him." She doesn't owe him forgiveness, but something in her voice, quiet, resolve, sounds a lot like hope. They work until sunrise. Documents line the table, diagrams of shell companies, arrows, question marks. It looks less like an investigation and more like a war room. Two people on opposite sides of fortune, united by a single truth. They both lost everything because of one man. At one point, their hands brush across the table, reaching for the same document. They pause, not because of attraction, but recognition. For the first time, they see each other not as victim and millionaire, but as equals standing in the wreckage of one man's greed. The clock ticks. Outside, the city wakes, unaware that in this small apartment, its next scandal is being mapped out line by line. Every story has a point where pain becomes purpose. This was theirs. The alliance no one saw coming, forged not from romance, not from trust, but from necessity. And necessity is stronger than anything love or power could ever buy. Would you join forces with the person who reminds you of your worst mistake? Could you swallow pride long enough to let them save you? Ethan Cole just did. She closes the laptop and looks at him. You need to prepare yourself. He is going to come after you now. He looks at her with a wry smile on his face. Let him. Outside, thunder rolls again. Faint, distant, but coming closer. Somewhere across the river, Miles Trent watches the news and smiles. He thinks the game is over. He's wrong. The board just reset. And in a city that feeds on secrets, two unlikely allies have just lit the first spark of war.
By morning, the city was already writing his obituary. News anchors spoke with that careful tone reserved for fallen kings. Insider trading allegations, they called it. Possible fraud. No charges, no proof, but enough to taint his name. In business, reputation doesn't die loudly. It bleeds out, one headline at a time. Ethan Cole, the self-made billionaire, now branded a cheat. The same papers that once praised him now dissect his ruin with appetite. He stops reading after the third article, but the damage is already done. Claire is in her apartment. The blinds are half closed. The sound of her father's oxygen machine keeps time with the rain outside. She's been up all night, cross-checking documents, tracing transfers, memorizing names. But paranoia doesn't knock. It slips in quietly. At first it's a sound. Footsteps in the hallway, then a shadow under the door. The knob turns once, twice. She freezes. Fear has a sound. It's the catch of your breath when you realize you're not alone. She reaches for the nearest thing, an old metal lamp. The door creaks, then slams shut. Whoever was there is gone. But when she steps outside, her mailbox is open. Inside, a single envelope, blank, no address. She tears it open. Inside, one photo. Her and Ethan at her table the previous night. A message scrawled beneath it in pen. Stop digging. In thrillers, threats come as gunshots. In real life, they arrive as whispers in the dark. She doesn't call the police. She knows better. You can't report a war no one admits exists. Instead, she calls Ethan. Her voice trembles just once. Someone broke into my place. He's silent for a long time. Then, pack a bag. I'll be there in 20 minutes. By the time he arrives, she's waiting at the curb. Her father's being moved temporarily to a friend's apartment. She refuses to leave him until he's safe. It's raining again. Always raining. They drive in silence through the city. Two fugitives of different kinds, one hunted by fear, the other by guilt. Inside Ethan's car, the dashboard glows pale blue. The radio murmurs with breaking news. The SEC is investigating coal industries. Miles Trent has temporarily assumed leadership. Ethan, under his breath. He's already rewriting the story. Clara, then write yours faster. It's the first time she's ever raised her voice to him. The weight in her tone makes him glance over. She's not angry. She's done being dismissed. He says nothing, but his grip on the wheel tightens. Back at Ethan's penthouse, the place now feels colder, stripped of the certainty it once carried. He sits at the kitchen counter, staring at the news on the muted television. His photo beside Miles's, the headline cruel in its simplicity. Cole accused of corporate theft. He almost laughs. The irony is too sharp. Accused of stealing what was stolen from him. Clara moves behind him, scanning the article on her phone. The disgust in her eyes is quiet, but fierce. You can't hide. If you do, they win. You go public, tell the truth, show them what you found. And lose whatever's left? My investors, my reputation? They'll destroy me. Clara looked at him and said sternly, Ethan, they already have. Her voice cuts through the noise like the night she first warned him. He knows that tone now. It's not defiance, it's clarity. You ignored me once. Don't do it again. The words land heavy. No threat, no pleading, just truth. He turns toward her, the weight of guilt and admiration warring inside him. He sees the woman he dismissed, now standing in the wreckage of his empire, offering him a way out he's too afraid to take. And she's right. Fear and pride, they're cousins. They both whisper the same lie. But waiting never saves anyone. He nods once, slowly. All right, we fight. Not loud, not cinematic, just a sentence whispered between two people with nothing left to lose. But sometimes that's where revolutions begin. They turn off the lights. The city glows beneath them, indifferent. Two figures silhouetted against the window. One man learning humility, one woman reclaiming power. Have you ever stood beside someone you once underestimated and realized you're now standing on the same ground? Not above, not below, equal. That's where they are now. She lays out her plan. A timeline, a strategy, the journalists she can contact, the records that prove the conspiracy. He listens, not as a CEO, but as a student. In another story, this would be where the romance begins, but here, it's something rarer. Trust reborn from ruin. The kind of connection that doesn't spark. It smolders. Outside, a black car idles across the street, unseen, but watching. Inside, a man in a suit speaks into a phone. She's with him. They're together. Danger doesn't knock twice. It just waits for the right moment to strike. And for Ethan and Clara, that moment is already on its way. They don't know it yet, but by choosing to fight, they've crossed the line between survival and exposure, between fear and defiance. There's no going back.
The rain stops. For the first time all night, the city goes still. And somewhere in that stillness, a story changes course. The hunted have decided to hunt back.
In the days that followed their decision to fight, Ethan and Clara built a kind of war room out of desperation and caffeine. His penthouse transformed into a crime lab of screens, cables, and paper trails. Every drawer spilled receipts, contracts, flash drives. Every hour peeled away another layer of deceit. They followed the money first. Always follow the money. Thornhill Capital to Trent Holdings, then further down the rabbit hole. False subsidiaries, offshore accounts tucked inside shell corporations that led to a quiet bank in Zurich. Each transfer timestamp matched the nights Miles told Ethan to sleep easy. But proof wasn't enough. Proof could be buried. What they needed was a witness and a voice that couldn't be silenced. That's when Clara remembered the name, Mara Linton. It is in a dim cafe on the Lower East Side, rain against the window, neon lights flickering outside. Mara Linton wasn't the kind of journalist who chased gossip. She hunted corruption like it owed her money. Fired once for refusing to kill a story, she now ran her own independent channel, small, ruthless, and watched by millions who'd stopped trusting traditional news. When Clara called, Mara didn't ask why, only when. Hours later, they met in that cafe. Mara arrives in a trench coat, hair pulled back, eyes sharp enough to cut through any lie. She sets down her recorder. Mara, so the golden boy of Wall Street got played. Why come to me? Ethan replied, because you're not owned by anyone. Mara laughed. That's flattering, but also dangerous. Clara slides a folder across the table. Inside, bank transfers, email screenshots, a recorded conversation between Miles and a Helios attorney discussing asset redirection. Mara listens. Her expression doesn't change. She's seen monsters before, but this one feels personal. If I run this, they'll come for you, both of you. Clara replied, they already have. Good. Then you've got nothing left to lose, Mara said as she put the documents in her trusty bag. It's a strange moment, the three of them sitting in a storm deciding whether the truth is worth the price it always demands. Outside, the city glows, unaware it's about to be shaken awake. 2 nights later, Mara's studio goes live. A small crew, minimal lights, the air thick with tension. Ethan Cole hasn't been seen publicly in weeks. His fall from grace has become a media circus, a spectacle everyone believes is already over. But tonight he's back, not to beg, not to explain, but to expose. The red light flashes, on air. Mara starts with the calm of a surgeon preparing for incision. Good evening. Tonight we're speaking with former CEO Ethan Cole, a man accused of insider trading, now claiming he was the victim of one of the largest corporate frauds in recent history. Camera pans. Ethan sits beside her, posture rigid, eyes steady. Clara stands off screen, headset on, scanning feeds and data. The first minutes are cautious. Dates, statements, timelines. Then Ethan drops the first bomb. Clause 14B. That's where it started. A single clause inserted into a merger contract by my CFO, Miles Trent. Mara leans forward. You're accusing your own CFO of fraud. Ethan replied, I'm stating facts. He slides a document across the table. The camera zooms. The world leans closer.
The broadcast begins spreading like wildfire. Screens in offices, phones on subway platforms, televisions in bars, everyone watching as the man they'd mocked for falling now stands ready to burn down the system that betrayed him. But truth always rattles cages. Halfway through the interview, Mara's producer gets a call, a lawyer from Trent Holdings threatening a defamation suit. Cease immediately, the voice demands. Retract or face legal action. Mara doesn't even blink. Tell them to sue the truth, Mara says. And she keeps rolling. On camera, Ethan reveals encrypted emails, correspondence between Miles and offshore trustees confirming the acid reassignments. Voice notes play over the air and Miles' smooth voice admitting to finalizing the transfer and keeping Cole out of the loop. Clara stands behind the cameras, watching the truth she unearthed finally being spoken aloud. Her hands shake, but not from fear, from release. For years, she's carried the weight of seeing corruption win. Tonight, it finally loses a round. Suddenly, the studio lights flicker. The live stream dips for a second, then stabilizes. Technical interference or maybe something else. Someone trying to cut the feed. Mara signals the crew to keep recording. She leans into the mic. If anyone's trying to shut us down, understand this. You can't bury the truth once it's live. The chat explodes, thousands watching, commenting, sharing. What started as a quiet expose becomes a global broadcast. Screenshots of documents flood social media. Reporters scramble to verify sources. Government regulators start making calls. The empire that betrayed him now feels the walls closing in. But even as victory takes shape, Clara's instincts whisper caution. She's seen what power does when cornered. Miles won't run, not yet. He'll strike back first. In the control room, her phone vibrates. One message from an unknown number. You should have stayed invisible. She looks up, expression calm, but her heartbeat loud in her ears. Would you keep going, knowing exposure could destroy you? Would you finish the story even if it meant painting a target on your back? Clara would. Ethan already has. The broadcast ends with a single image, a scanned document signed by Miles Trent himself, his initials, his timestamp, his undoing. Mara turns to the camera. If this is true, then tonight isn't just about one man's redemption. It's about what happens when the people we trust the most think they'll never be caught. She looks straight into the lens, and they just were. Outside, the city buzzes with the kind of energy that only comes when the powerful begin to fall. Phones ring in boardrooms, subpoenas drafted in midnight offices, and somewhere Miles Trent watches the broadcast on mute, the faintest smirk fading from his face. The expose has gone live, and there's no turning it off. Ethan finally breathes. Clara watches him from the doorway, a flicker of relief crossing her face, but neither of them mistake it for peace. The storm has only changed direction. Every lie exposed leaves a shadow behind it. And when men like Miles lose control, that's when they become most dangerous.
Hours after the expose aired, phones rang in rooms the public never sees. Miles Trent wasn't panicking. He was paying. Mara Linton's phone lights up minutes later. A blocked number, a soft voice, a man offering a settlement for the sake of privacy. You've made quite an impact tonight, Ms. Linton. Imagine what you could do with real funding, the strange voice said. You think you can buy silence? Replied Mara. Not silence. Perspective, the voice said again. Mara doesn't answer. She ends the call, but the doubt lingers. Mara looks across the room at the studio, crew packing up, lights dimming, coffee gone cold. Ethan stands near the monitors, drained but alive. Clara, meanwhile, is on her phone, typing fast, unreadable focus on her face. You see, Clara Ruiz never trusted systems, not the courts that ruined her, not the media that ignored her, and certainly not the men who built their careers on loopholes. So before that broadcast went live, she did what no one asked her to do. The night before the expose, Clara sat alone at Ethan's desk as the city lights flickered behind her. She uploaded the evidence, contracts, recordings, financial ledgers to a dozen encrypted drives, one to a journalist in London, another to a watchdog in D.C., one to the SEC itself, each sent anonymously, each time-stamped before dawn. She knew if the story went dark, the truth would still have a pulse. Back to the present. The newsroom goes quiet. Mara's producer bursts in, eyes wide. They're trying to take the story down. Legal threats, injunctions, everything. Mara's phone buzzes again. Same number. The offer doubles. Voice, 500,000. Walk away. She hesitates. Then she sees Clara staring at her from across the room. Eyes sharp, steady, knowing. Some people remind you who you were before the world got too loud. Clara was that reminder. Mara ends the call. Let him come, she says. It's already out there. Outside, dawn breaks, a gray light crawling over the skyline. At 8:12 a.m., a convoy of black SUVs pulls up outside Helios Energy headquarters. Federal agents step out, badges catching the morning sun. Inside, Miles Trent is mid-call when the glass doors open. A woman in a Navy suit flashes her credentials. U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, we have a warrant. The room freezes. Assistants glance at Miles, waiting for orders that don't come. His confidence fractures. Not shatters, just cracks enough for fear to show. He grabs his phone, slips through a side door, calls the driver, get the car ready. Ethan watches the live coverage on Mara's feed. It's poetic. The same cameras that once broadcast his downfall now catch his betrayer running from justice. The image burns into every screen. Miles Trent, the architect of deceit, ducking into a black sedan as agents flood the building he once ruled. Would you forgive yourself if your redemption came as someone else's ruin? Or is justice just another name for revenge when you've lost enough? Ethan can't answer yet. He just stares at the screen, silent. In the corner, Claire's phone buzzes. An unknown number again. She opens it. A message from an SEC officer. Documents received. Your foresight accelerated the investigation. You did the right thing. She exhales for the first time in days. Truth had found its proof. The empire had found its reckoning. And somewhere, amid the static of news alerts and sirens, Clara Ruiz finally felt something close to peace. Not triumph, just peace. Miles, meanwhile, was on the highway, sirens fading behind him, phone pressed to his ear. A woman's voice answers. You can't run forever, Mr. Trent. Miles responds, watch me. He ends the call, disappearing into the chaos of morning traffic. He won't make it far. Men like him never do. Because you can buy silence, but not time. And time has already run out. Later that afternoon, Ethan and Clara stand by the window of Mara's studio. The city looks different now, calmer, brighter, honest for once. Ethan looks at Clara. You knew they'd try to bury it. I've seen them bury worse, Clara replied. With clarity in his eyes, maybe for the first time in a long while, he exhales. You saved us. Clara looks at him. No, you just finally listened. For the first time since it began, they smile, not because it's over, but because they're still standing. Behind them, Mara's voice on the broadcast. Breaking news. The SEC confirms a raid at Helios Energy following revelations of large-scale corporate fraud. Sources say former CFO Miles Trent is under federal investigation. Ethan Cole cleared of wrongdoing. His name begins to heal, not through lawyers or spin, but through the truth spoken by a woman no one thought mattered. Every great empire forgets the people who built it, the ones sweeping its floors, reading its fine print, cleaning up after its victories. But sometimes those are the same people who save it. Clara Ruiz was one of them. Would you recognize the person who changed your life if you passed them on the street tomorrow? Would you stop long enough to thank them? Or would you keep walking until the whisper you ignored became the story you couldn't escape? The expose is over, but the story isn't finished. Because truth doesn't end with applause. It ends with change.
Morning light spilled across the city like forgiveness. Quiet, slow,
and real. For the first time in months, Ethan Cole's name wasn't followed by scandal. It was followed by truth. The headlines no longer called him the fallen billionaire. They called him something else, the man who listened. Helios Energy and coal industries were under reconstruction, not demolition. The board had dissolved, the shareholders voted to rebuild, and federal agents carried boxes of evidence through the same glass doors where champagne once flowed. But inside those walls, something else was happening, something quieter and more personal. Ethan's office was stripped bare, sunlight falling across empty shelves and a single framed photograph, the original coal industries team, smiling before ambition soured the air. Clara stands at the doorway, arms folded, her expression unreadable. You don't have to come back, you know. You've already done more for this company than anyone ever did for me, said Ethan. I'm not here for the company. She steps forward, dropping a folder on his desk. This is the file the SEC found. You should read page 3. He opens it. Words blur at first. Legal jargon, old dates, disbarment proceedings. Then he sees her name, Clara Ruiz, attorney at law, disbarred for professional misconduct, tied to a whistleblower case from 6 years earlier. He looks up at her, the weight of realization cutting through him. The truth of her past sits between them, heavy and undeniable. The world took her voice once. She rebuilt it in whispers. You were a lawyer. Was. Until I defended someone, the wrong people wanted quiet. And they destroyed you for it. They tried. For a long moment, there was nothing but the hum of the city below them. That strange music of cars, people, life going on like none of this ever happened. He closes the file. You shouldn't have been cleaning offices. You should have been running one. We don't always get to choose how we start over, replied Clara. He walks to the window, looking out at the skyline that nearly became his tombstone. I want to rebuild from scratch. New board, new ethics, new direction. I can't do it alone. He turns back to her. I'm offering you a partnership. The words land heavier than any contract. For him, it's redemption. For her, it's risk. The same world that burned her once is now inviting her back in. She looks at the offer, the new proposal on the table. Short, simple, only one clause written in his handwriting. Clause A, honesty before profit. Her lips curl faintly. For the first time, he's quoting her language, not his. You really think they'll let you run a company on principles? I don't care if they let me. I'm doing it anyway. And if you fall again, then at least I'll fall right. There's something raw in his tone, not arrogance, not pity, just truth, the kind she spent her life chasing. She hesitates. For all the courage she's shown, this choice scares her more than any danger before. To trust again, to build again, it's another kind of exposure. Clara said, I can't. Ethan fred, can't or won't? Clara said, both. She leaves without another word. The door shuts quietly, but the sound feels final. Ethan stands alone again, the same way he started, surrounded by glass, hunted by reflections.
Only this time, he knows what's missing. That evening, Ethan sits in the now empty boardroom, pen tapping against a blank sheet of paper. He's drafting a new charter, one clause at a time. Behind him, the elevator dings, soft footsteps. Then her voice. Clause 1A. He turns. She's standing there, calm, composed, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Honesty before profit. You meant it? Every word. He expected negotiation, conditions, debate. Instead, she simply walks over, picks up the pen, and signs beside him. Then let's make it law. It isn't a love confession, not yet. But in that moment, something shifts, not between them, but around them. The world that once divided them finally stands still. Ethan and Clara walk side by side through the lobby. Employees watch quietly. No one sees a boss and a cleaner. They see two people who refuse to stay broken. Every empire needs rebuilding, some from fire, some from truth. This one from both. They step outside into the cool air. The street hums with life, ordinary and alive. The storm has passed. Would you forgive the world that buried you if it finally handed you a second chance? Would you take it, even knowing how easily it can be lost again? Clara did. Ethan did. Together, they chose to believe that maybe, just maybe, rebuilding doesn't have to mean repeating. And if you listen closely enough, you'll hear it still, the whisper that started it all, now an oath etched in glass and light. Quasi, honesty before profit. Two signatures, one promise. No longer the millionaire and the cleaning lady, just two people walking out of the same building, finally on the same ground. The city watches them disappear into the crowd. Every empire has its empire. Every empire, its fall. But sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you'll find its redemption too. Written not in contracts or clauses, but in courage.
The city forgets fast. Headlines fade, scandals trade places, and new names rise to replace the old. But somewhere between those stories, a whisper still lingers, a reminder of what was nearly lost. It began in a boardroom built on glass, with a contract thick enough to hide betrayal and a woman the world never thought to notice. And it ended here, not in revenge, but in renewal. Ethan Cole rebuilt his empire, but not the way people expected. He didn't chase profit or applause. He built a company that valued transparency over triumph, people over numbers. Investors called him naive. He called it freedom. And by his side, though never in his shadow, stood Clara Ruiz. Once a janitor, once a lawyer, now something harder to divine. She never wanted recognition, but her name found its way back into the records she was erased from. Case reinstated, the letter said. No apology, just a correction. But sometimes that's enough. The world didn't change overnight. It never does. But one voice, one small act of courage can shift the ground beneath giants. If you listen closely, you can still hear her story in the quiet corners of that building, in the shuffle of papers, the turning of pages, the ink of every new contract signed with care. It isn't about wealth or status. It's about the one clause that never fades from memory. Honesty before profit. Somewhere out there,
Someone is about to make the same mistake Ethan once did, to overlook the person who might save them. Maybe they'll remember this story, and maybe they'll listen to the voice that everyone else ignores. Because sometimes the greatest revolutions don't start in boardrooms or courtrooms. They start with a whisper, a quiet act of defiance in a world too loud to hear it. And when the lights of the city flicker at night between the noise of traffic and the hum of power, maybe, just maybe, you'll hear it too. Sir, check this clause. 6 words, 1 empire reborn, 2 lives forever changed. Not by wealth, not by power, but by the courage to speak and the humility to finally listen. And that is how a whisper became a legacy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your take on this one. And if this story moved you, if you felt even a glimpse of truth in their pain, please take a moment to like this video. It helps more people like you discover stories that remind us what it means to feel. Don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just be the one that stays with you forever. This was Millionaire Love Tales, where hearts remember what money forgets.